And I have with me today, we've got Stephen Fenech from I was introduced to him, of course, from the Shopping Channel, but I didn't know about his desire to travel on the ultimate scale until I started following him on Facebook. Stephen, you were a jib operator at the Shopping Channel. You were born in Toronto, and your dad was a TV producer and a music composer, was it?
Yeah, that's exactly how I got started. I was knee high to a grasshopper when I started kind of working in the television industry. I was volunteering on his show. So he had a cable TV show for the Maltese community in Toronto, showing like the news and current affairs back in Malta for the community here. And so I was introduced to the TV industry at a very early age, and that's where I got my start.
And you spent some time in Malta as a child as well.
Yeah, I actually went to school there. My parents took me on several occasions to Malta, and I really I learned the language, and it actually helped me in my travels because the Maltese language is derived from Phoenician, which is like an ancient form of Arabic. So in Arabic-speaking countries, I can actually understand what's going on. Some of the words come from Italian. It's actually a hosh-posh of Italian, Sicilian, French, Spanish, English, and mostly Arabic. So it's kind of a very bizarre language.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, listen, I am so amazed at what I mean, you wrote a book, and I think the name of the book would be, it would tell everything that we're going to talk about, because the book's name was Earth, Been There, Done That, Got the T-shirt. And you, sir, you've completed the planet Earth, which I know people that have gone to Mexico every year for 13 years. And I know people that go to the Dominican Republic and they go here. I got a friend right now in Bali. You took this to the ninth degree. You have visited every country, all seven continents. Tell
Yeah.
me about tell me how that got started.
Well, it started in high school when I was watching some documentaries in a world issues class in grade 13 when there was still a grade 13 before the OACs. And I just was so moved by these images of, countries in Africa and the different cultures that I just felt like I was just an outside observer. I felt like I wanted to reach in and actually be in the scene and explore these places for myself, have a more visceral experience. Um, and so, I mean, that was the impetus. But then, what do you call it? When I started traveling, I went down to the Dominican Republic, and it was really like I said, this is my first experience, first backpacking experience. It was actually right after my last exam. Like a few hours later, I was on the plane down there, and it was actually a disaster. The plane landed late. I didn't speak any Spanish, so I went in there really cold turkey. And because the plane landed so late, all the banks were closed. So I had no local currency. And because everyone was speaking to me in Spanish, I didn't know what they were after. And I was actually very afraid. I kept my distance and I didn't want to associate with anybody. I felt so threatened. I ended up walking 24 kilometers from the airport in to Puerto Plata. And I spent the night, like all night long, sleeping or trying to sleep on a construction site in the middle of a shanty town on the outskirts. And honestly, over the like, I never thought I would actually get to this point. Like the fact, I mean, it was kind of a struggle at times, and so many hoops I had to jump through. And like there's like you have to placate different logistical organizations, forms of government, embassies, and just dealing with their bureaucracy. And, you don't know if it's going to happen, and it's back and forth. And, but, now it's just like, wow, I actually did it. So it's very empowering that, despite it, the uphill battle, I actually achieved the summit.
But at one point, where did I mean, you didn't plan out to see all 196 countries. You just started traveling because you got the bug. So what happened? You went all of a sudden you realized I've seen 10 countries. Oh, there's only 186 left. Why not?
Well, it became a work in progress, and as a matter of fact, my second book is called Missing Pieces to the Global Puzzle. So after I finished a 3 year trip around the world where I linked 61 countries over that time span, I started just seeing what I could do at the time. Like, I mean, when I first started, Saudi Arabia was completely closed to foreigners, like for tourists. They weren't issuing tourist visas, so that was like the whole concept of finishing the world at that point was pie in the sky. But then, slowly but surely, I started making that kind of progress, and I was like charting my progress. I said, this is doable. And I just realized at that point that, I just have to be very tenacious and never, they say obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eye off your goal. Yeah.
So you listen, if I want to go somewhere, I could ask many friends, like, what's the nicest place you've ever been? But you, sir, I have other questions for you because I mean, if there was ever a time or a place, were you ever somewhere, and I'm sure it had to happen, were you ever someplace where you went, I got to get out of here?
Oh yeah, on more than one occasion.
I'm sure. Tell me a couple of those stories.
Well, if I'm going to say the one that takes the cake was Equatorial Guinea. See, I was in Gabon and I needed to get back to Cameroon to Douala. So rather, the way the countries are situated, Equatorial Guinea is sandwiched between the two. And it seemed, on the map, it was like maybe the distance of maybe half the length of New Brunswick. So I thought, oh, this is doable. But what I didn't realize was the complete lack of infrastructure. I was on a muddy road through the jungle. And what happened was the country, I had arrived in Equatorial Guinea on the heels of a failed coup d'etat. And so the whole country was almost in a state of anarchy. And so the military were just, taking measures into their own hand. And I was, in the time for me to traverse from the southern border to the northern border, I was stopped at 14 police checkpoints along this muddy artery. Yeah, they wanted bribes, they wanted money, they just, here comes the cash cow. And so they wouldn't let me go until I actually paid them. More times than not, I was able to talk my way out of it. They actually speak Spanish there, but at one point, a military guy actually put his gun to my heart. He was going to shoot me if I didn't give him the money. And I mean, I'm in the middle of the jungles. What am I going to do? They speak Spanish there. And I told him in Spanish, I said, yo no soy banco. I said, yo trabajo para dineros con vosotros, which translated means, I said, I'm not a bank. I said, I work for my money like you do. And I mean, I still had to pay him a bribe. But I mean, in hindsight, yeah, I was pretty stupid. I was about to throw my life away for $10.
Yes. Wow. And
Yeah.
so he actually had a gun to your heart.
Yep. Yep. Pulled out his sidearm, just pointed his gun right at my heart.
My God. And where was the most untouched place you've ever been, like from human civilization, where you were like you felt like you were thousands of years in the past?
Wow. Well, the best trip of my life was down to Antarctica because that was really untouched. And just to see all of this nature in grand display, like penguin rookeries where you got 10,000 penguins and they're all, squawking at each other, just going around. And they're so comical when they're on ground. Like, I mean, they're very agile when they're in the water, but just being surrounded by them. And it was really amazing because they've never been, hunted or anything, they have no fear of man. So I'm curious about them, but it seemed they were more curious about me. So I had penguins actually walking up to me, looking up at me, and just like, who are you? Oh, it was hilarious. And just, I don't know, I just kind of attributed kind of human characteristics to them. I was almost like they were best of friends, just having conversations like, hey, Bill, how's the wife and kids,
Oh, listen, I watched the March of the Penguins,
Oh, yeah.
and that was an amazing show. Now, speaking of documentaries, you yourself did a documentary that I watched last week. It was Chad Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about Chad Exodus. That was your introduction into the film industry, was it not?
Yeah, that was my first film, my first breakthrough film. And I actually, when I went to Chad, I didn't go down there with the intention of making a film. I was just, shooting video footage of, my destination. And it just, the story kind of wrote itself as I was visiting them, and I learned about the Bororo Wadabi tribe. They're like all these nomadic herdsmen that, yeah, that's me with one of them. They congregate in a certain part of the Sahel region of Africa after the rainy season, and they have this festival called Gerwal, which means choosing the best one. So women will actually pick men will parade themselves in front of the women, and they actually go off to mate and increase the population of the tribe. But there's
Wow, it's like a primitive Tinder.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's the progenitor of
Yeah,
Tinder.
that's right. So tell me about that ceremony. What happens there?
Oh, well, what doesn't happen? Like, I mean, apart from the Exodus itself, and I know Exodus isn't the exact right word because they do it every year, but it just seemed like just seeing them, like thousands of people coming from across the plain. It was just, I was so overwhelmed by it. You know, all their cattle and their goats, and everybody's moving together. And then they congregate in this area, and they have, you know, competitions, horse racing, and you know, different. They sing and chant, and it's all a good time. Everything is, you know,
Now, the
peaceful.
males being picked, they ingest some sort of hallucinogenic. What's up with that?
Oh, it's just to make themselves more appealing to the women. The effect of
It never worked with any of my old flames.
it makes their eyes go bigger,
Okay,
and you know, yeah, and so they try and show the whitest teeth, and you know, like just you know, the most colorful costumes as
right.
well. So it's a very colorful display.
The what I noticed as well. I mean, I'm going to put a link to that documentary. It's 50 minutes long, and I urge everybody to watch this because what a glimpse into a culture that is. I mean, it is thousands upon thousands of years old. This culture, and as a matter of fact, I remember reading many years ago, and I had to refresh my memory with Google. In northern Chad, they found, I mean, it's so rich in archaeology and history, but they found a skull. I think it was Tumai, they named it, but it was a skull, 7 million-year-old skull. And this created quite a stir in the paleontology industry because it just outdated any previous skulls by a couple million years. And they didn't know, I mean, they were claiming that it was human ancestry. Others were saying no, it's ape, and I do believe the debate is still going on. But that was one of the earliest, oldest skulls they've ever found of a hominid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I want to do a little more research. I just found that out the other day when I was. So you got me interested in Chad after watching that documentary, and then I remembered. Oh my God, that was the 7 million-year-old skull. You know, north.
Speaking of older dates, I was when I was in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. I went to the museum there, and I actually got to see Lucy.
Oh wow, yes,
Yeah, yeah. You know, I just thought, well, good, take an older woman on a date, but you know,
yes,
six
yeah.
million years old.
That's
But she
incredible.
wasn't very talkative, so I left.
Yes. Well, this isn't Lucy, but tell me about this one.
Oh wow, that was one of the most humbling experiences of my life. Was tracking the mountain gorillas in Zaire, which is now the Democratic Republic of Congo. So yeah, across the border from Uganda, up in the Ruwenzoris, the mountains, and it was like something. It was almost like a reenactment of the biopic of Diane Fossey and Gorillas in the Mist, because similar things happened. Like my first thing that happened when we were tracking them, I actually did step in a big pile of gorilla poo, and and then we could hear them kind of grunting, and then they kind of came around and they congregated around us. And the first thing I remember were two adolescent gorillas chasing each other around me. It was almost like they were playing tag. Um, but I mean, there was a scary incident too, because one what wasn't didn't happen to me, but there was a woman in my party. She was from Denmark, and you're not supposed to make eye contact with the dominant male, the silverback, and she did. and he just charged her, and I thought he was going to kill her. I mean, our guide, he just, he screamed at her. He says, "Arrête!" They speak French there. He goes, "Arrête!" And he like, "Stop, get down." He was telling her, and she did, but she was like shaking. And I was shaking just watching it. And the gorilla just reared up and he started pounding his chest. And what do you call it? Because she was submissive, he just kind of, gave her a tisk tisk, and then he sauntered off. But no, that picture you were showing, that was just as our time with the gorillas was wrapping up, and I was just sitting on the ground putting my camera equipment away, and the mother that you saw walked up to me with the baby on her back, and she let her baby down, and the baby was like just the size of a small teddy bear, kind of crawled up into my lap, and he started like handling my camera equipment, and he was like licking the barrel of the lens. And I was like, I was afraid that, because the
Yes.
mother was just kind of looking at me, kind of like, she looked almost bored, but I was just like kind of petting the baby's back very gently, because I didn't want to make anything, to threaten the baby. But then the mother grunted and the baby walked back to the mother, and she put him on her back again, and they sauntered off.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
And yeah, who knows how the mother wanted to react when the baby was actually touching you.
Oh yeah, he was sitting right in my lap, and I was just so, it was so humbling. I just, it's really funny because your heart's palpitating, and I mean at the same time you're just feeling such a deep sense of humility at the same time, because I mean just the like, I even remember one of the adolescents, he walked up to me, or she, I don't know, and just kind of squeezed my cheeks together like you would a baby, until my lips. And I was just like, and he's like laughing.
Yes.
So it was just amazing. It was just a most incredible experience.
I mean, again, back to Chad again. When I watched that documentary, there was the Jeeps got stuck in the mud, and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and you camped out that night, and then of course it started to rain, so everywhere. So that was incredible footage to watch. I mean, and you were living in a tent that night.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So even while we were staying with the tribe, we were camped maybe about 200 to 300 meters away from their camp circle. But because we were actually considered part of the tribe, so long as we remain decent and peaceful to the rest of the tribe, then the chief welcomes us and they consider us part of the tribe. So, all the animals would kind of gather around our tents, and we were just as interesting to the kids as they were to us. So they would just be hanging around our tents the whole time. But yeah, we were camping the whole time.
That's incredible. Now the weather was, I mean, rainy, but what was the temperature like at nights?
It was fairly hot. It was fairly hot. Not too humid, but it took a while to nod off. But the interesting thing about that was that with the screen open, like even when the daylight, you lose the daylight, they still dance and sing all night long. And so even though they don't make campfires or anything, but it's used to, so that's what you fall asleep to, is the sound of their singing in the
Wow.
distance. It was wonderful.
Well, yeah, they were high. Who could go to sleep? The I mean, the bulging eyes. That was I don't know what they were on, but it was something. It was quite something to watch. This picture, I believe, was Kenya.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yes.
that was the Maasai Indians in the Masai Mara, which is the northern part of the Serengeti. And yeah, so we got to visit them in their village, and it was very interesting because we actually employed one of the Maasai Indians to guard our camp. And one night he actually chased a lion away with just a spear.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I got one last photograph, and the rest I'm going to save for your slideshow because I mean the pictures that you've taken over, I guess, what was it, 36 years?
Yeah.
Like how many thousands upon thousands do
Oh,
you have?
hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands,
Yeah.
and which is it's an amazing collection. But this is probably one of my personal favorites. What a great shot.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was in Cameroon. That was a mandrill. That was just prior to us climbing Mount Cameroon, which is the second highest mountain in Africa. It's the highest in West Africa. But yeah, so that was just like at a sanctuary there, near
Oh,
the base of the mountain.
yeah. No, I am so looking forward to the slideshow. What can we expect? Because let's talk about that just for a moment. You next week on the 24th of May, you have a slideshow presentation. Tell everyone where it is, what they can expect, and go ahead.
Okay, well, it's at the Rock Pile, which is a concert bar on Dundas Street. The address is 45, so 5555 Dundas Street West, near Kipling Station. And the presentation is literally the entire world. It's going to be all seven continents, every country. And I'm going to be highlighting some of the more hair-raising adventures that I've had. A lot of life and death experiences, but kind of documenting it. And I'll have a few copies of my first travel book, for purchase, just at a discounted rate, but limited quantities.
Is this Earth?
And
Are you going to have the book Earth?
yes.
Okay, good, because I want to sign a copy for sure, but I'm
Oh.
going to purchase one of those. Yep. And
Yeah, and so it's going to be very, very casual. I'll have make this huge PowerPoint presentation, and the bar's open if anyone wants to buy a beer or whatever. It's free admission, and there's tons of free parking. That's why I chose the venue, and it's easy to get to because it's just off the 427.
okay, so they have a cash bar. Is there food there as well?
Yeah, yeah, if they want. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
there's food there. And
And what time is this set?
well, the doors open at 7 p.m. and the show will start at 8. So if they get there anywhere between 7 and 8, they're good.
They're good. Okay, well, certainly looking forward to that. And I know some of our friends from the shopping channel are going to be there. And I hope some of my other friends are going to be there too, because it's going to be a great event. And I want to thank you very much for taking the time. Again, I mean, we met at the shopping channel, and it's funny because being a jib operator as opposed to just a straight cameraman zooming in and out, it's kind of indicative of who you are. Because a jib operator, it's the zoom in and it's over high, you're all over the place, which is again kind of indicative of your
Yeah.
life. You just didn't want to
Get the
be
different angles.
different angles. That's right.
Yeah.
Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This has been
Thanks,
an
Larry. I really
absolute
enjoyed it.
pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And what's even more, I would love to buy you a beer one day on a sunny patio, and I could listen to your stories for hours.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you so much, Larry.
We'll talk again, and you have a great day.